Right guys, hope you're all doing well, hope you're all keeping safe. Today I wanted to talk about comments from Johan, developer at Massive, surrounding the future of State of the Game, and also discuss the poll that I put out yesterday asking you guys if State of the Game should return. On top of that, Division 2 had a pretty rough day on Wednesday, and Golden Bullet has been extended by another week. If you want to support me, drop a like and subscribe to stay up to date with all the videos. And let's begin. It's been nearly 4 months now since we had the last State of the Game on December 2nd last year. I think it's safe to assume no one, except the devs of course and Ubisoft, had any idea this was intended to be the last State of the Game and the last update for the game. There were many videos here on YouTube, some of them being my own. There was forum posts on Reddit and the Ubisoft forums as well, speculating on when the next State of the Game would be coming following the Christmas break. Of course, we know now this was meant to be the last State of the Game, and TU12 was meant to be the last update for the game, until somewhat changed and Massive decided to continue development, announcing another major update in early development for release at some point in the future, either towards the end of this year or most likely next. Now with this announcement, then I guess one question that remains to be answered, among many of course, is will State of the Game be returning ? And I think more importantly, a question for us, the community, do we even want State of the Game to return? Now let's tackle the question of if this will be returning first, because we have some news surrounding that, albeit not conclusive, so unfortunately again lending itself to even more speculation. Now following the announcement of more content being developed, there have been plenty of questions asked and answered by the devs on Twitter, a lot of which I've covered in previous videos. Similar here, the question was asked of Massive if State of the Game would be returning or not, to which we had a response from Johan saying, quote, "It's currently undecided if we will return with State of the Game in the future," end quote. Now if you didn't know, and I'm not sure that I've spoke about this in a video previously, but Hamish is no longer working at Massive, and as of March this year has moved on to become a communications manager at Ubisoft Stockholm. This of course means that if State of the Game were to return at some point in the future, Hamish would no longer be the host, and knowing this actually makes me cast serious doubt on the return of State of the Game in the future. Of course, it's entirely possible that someone else could take the helm and host the show instead. Johan and Trick were active participants on the live streams all the way up until the last one in December, and we know they are currently working on the development of the next major update, so it's quite possible one of these could take over. It's also possible someone that we don't know yet could take over from Hamish, someone that maybe just took his position, but I honestly don't think that's going to happen. And I say this because I do expect the next major update to be the last one, and whilst we have confirmation of at least one more season being tied to this content, there's no reason why Massive wouldn't just drop State of the Game and have weekly articles on a Friday with updates. They already have these now, and it would fall in line with what other studios do as well. Do I want that to happen? No, I don't. And based on the results of the poll yesterday, neither do you guys. So let's take a look at the poll. So as you can see, the poll yesterday amassed 2.3k votes in 13 hours, which is just insane. So thanks to everyone who interacts with these, and I encourage you to keep doing so, as they really help me with the topics that I cover here on the channel. And that's not just for the Division, but that's for really any game that I'm going to cover. You know, we've got Outriders coming out on April 1st, and there's going to be plenty more polls coming to cover that as well as other stuff. So as you can see from the poll, it appears we had 60% of people voting yes and wanting State of the Game to return, 21% saying no, and then 19% saying depends, and this kind of falls in line with what I expected, to be honest. Now, I put the depends option in there because one of the biggest critiques of State of the Game was quite often there was no meat to those live streams. And what I mean is there was no real updates in those live streams, so it felt like it just wasn't needed. Obviously, this happened because it had become a weekly live stream, and whilst there was always something the devs had to say, not every week are there going to be huge news drops and things to really talk about. I mean, having looked at the comments to the poll, this is exactly what a lot of you guys have said. Often devs would come on a Wednesday, and Hamish would be there and he'd say, look, there's nothing really to note this week, there's a couple of fixes, we'll see you next week, basically. Which obviously for a lot of people, it just felt like a pretty pointless stream to have, and I can completely understand that for sure. For me personally though, even when the devs really had nothing to say, I used to always find State of the Game useful, because my biggest gripe with a lot of games in their studios in the current climate is the lack of visibility and the business-esque approach to gaming. It's probably the reason why I really like the way Outriders are currently doing it with their visibility. Now, what State of the Game did for me, more than most other games do, is make the people who are working on the game visible. It reassured me that stuff was happening, even if sometimes I'm sure the devs said things that never came to fruition, and I could probably pick out a lot of examples of those. It wasn't just, hey, Joe Blogs is working on this and that in some kind of article once every couple of weeks. It was, hey, this person who you can see and interact with through this live stream worked on that or is working on this, and they're the best person to speak to you about what you have to talk about. And that personal connection is somewhat rarely found in gaming. So for me, I would love to see State of the Game return. Now, do I think it should return on a weekly basis? Probably not. There's no doubt that sometimes I would get frustrated with the lack of any real information, and sometimes it felt like State of the Game 1 week was just put on because it had become this weekly show. It was expected, even when there was no information. So the devs would come on, they would give us no information, and we'd be disappointed. Now, I think if it were me, I would scale it back from being a weekly show, and maybe instead provide that weekly article that we get on a Friday, and then once a month have a live stream where they could address everything for that month or address stuff that's coming in the future, if anything at all. That to me is probably the best way to approach this, and I think this way everyone will be happy. What I think is going to happen is they're going to adopt a similar style to other games where you would get kind of like a weekly update, similar to Destiny, where you get the TWAB, which is the weekly update on the game, and what you get in a lot of games these days. That's where I think they're going to go with this. I think that's one of the reasons why Hamish is no longer the host of the show and he's moved on, because that position is no longer needed. Lastly, The Division 2 had a pretty awful day on Wednesday for PC players. Obviously, if you're on console, you wouldn't have known about it. If you were playing on PC, you definitely would have, and Twitter kind of exploded as a result. Now, it appears a Ubisoft Connect update had broken the game, with players reporting no more than 2 minutes of game time before the game crashing. This was eventually fixed, and there was comments back and forth about them taking so long and the lack of visibility and lack of communication and stuff, and I get that, but ultimately it was fixed in the end. And as an apology, the Golden Bullet global event has been extended 1 week, with maintenance for this taking place on Monday next week, the 29th. Now, I think this is probably the first time Massive have done this before, where they've extended an event due to issues with the game. I know for sure that we've asked for this before, where stuff like this has happened, and I'm pretty sure it's never been extended. So the fact that they've done it this time, I have to applaud them for this, especially because at the end of the day, Golden Bullet is by far the best global event, with many players asking for this to become a permanent feature in the game, something that you could toggle on and off. So I guess that's good news. But that's it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. If we do hear anything more about State of the Game, then I will be the first to cover it here. So make sure you've got notifications turned on. Also, I am going to be covering Outriders on the channel with the same ferocity as I have with The Division. So if you don't want to miss out on that content, subscribe and turn on notifications. Hope you all have a great weekend, and until next week, Epic out.